It's Monday, September 29th, 2014. I'm Jimmy Principe.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock, putting your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 90. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy launches the EU to Mars, Sydney bends her Apple update in half, and I am shell-shocked by a hacked VR experience. But we start tonight with the fact that everyone is doomed.
Welcome to the new age.
Chucky Finster
Seems
had it
more like
correct.
an end than a beginning.
Chucky Finster had it correct, and let me give you the simple, if slightly overly bombastic version of this. Every Mac computer ever made, most distributions of Linux, such as those that run most servers everywhere, many internet routers, most Internet of Things devices, and 60% of the internet that runs on Apache is vulnerable to an exploit that has been around since roughly 1989, was only formally discovered last week, and can be performed using only 3 lines of code. Ladies and gentlemen,
Fantastic.
I give you Shell Shock.
Because it shocks
Sounds
the
like
shell.
a
It's really funny.
Teenage
really.
Mutant Ninja Turtle
Really funny.
bad guy.
Yeah. So now for the slightly more complicated
Shell
version.
shock.
Security researchers have found a vulnerability in the Born Again shell, or Bash. At the risk of being overly simple, Bash is an open source command line interface to allow users to execute commands. Don't write in. That's
Love
about
that
all
you
you
think
need.
that's overly simple.
Yep. So remember command
If you
line.
think you need more, go listen to Security Now on
Remember
Twit.
command line from DOS? Remember that?
Yes.
It's basically that, but open source.
Got it.
Okay?
for Linux.
For Well, no, not for Unix or Linux. For anything Unix-based.
Right, okay, fair.
Hence OS 10. Okay? So, that's about enough for us to begin working with. What the vulnerability does, and this is the other really complicated part, what the vulnerability does is it allows commands to be executed. Remember, it executes commands. That's what Bash does. So it allows commands to be executed through certain variables, what you enter into the command line, without restrictions. It's a way to bypass all of the safety measures to make sure that random things don't hijack the system. It just bypasses that. And Bash is included as the command line in OS X, much of Linux and Linux embedded devices, such as webcams, and through the wildly popular internet protocol Apache, which does in fact power 60% of the web. There are patches starting to emerge. They're not all 100% effective yet. Apple has said that only a few users are actually vulnerable. In fact, the OS is secure by default. Yeah. But with Bash's widespread nature, there are plenty of systems that, even when reliable patches are out, will be left vulnerable.
And will never get updated.
And will potentially never get updated. There is also the potential that this exploit could turn into a worm, allowed it to be executed and spread without human intervention. The only news to make you feel better that I have to offer is that apparently the patch is very easy to write, and only took some security companies 10 minutes to write. So are you scared yet?
So, the most interesting bit of this that I heard was, so Bash has been open source forever.
Since 1989.
It's been open source forever. People have been using it forever, looking at this code forever. It took them 25 years to find this vulnerability and publish it.
Yeah, well, and publish
By
it.
they, I mean everyone except for the NSA.
Right, so that's the funny bit, right? Is potentially someone had to have known, right? This is open source software that's used by everything everywhere. What do you want to bet the NSA just lost a part of their playbook?
The NSA went, damn. They're thinking to themselves, man, we got a lot of play out of that one. I mean, we found it in 91. We thought we were doing pretty well. We figured they'd get it by 93. Man, we got it to 2014, man.
20 years down the road, we don't know how to not hack with that thing.
We can hack Bash with our eyes closed and 2 hands behind our back. We can do it with just
3
our
lines
toes,
of code,
man.
dude. Like, you or I could hack Bash right now. I have half of mine because I am one of the users that's vulnerable to it in OS 10 because I use the features that.
Right. Okay. So the thing in OS 10 that's good to know is that you have to be at quote advanced user. You have to activate something separately.
Right.
So if you gave an Apple computer to your grandmother because
She's fine. And
you thought that she needed something that was easy to use, she's fine because unless she
me.
really got into trouble and pressed buttons.
your Mac is not fine, dear.
Yeah, it doesn't have OS 10 on it right now, does it?
Your Mac has OS 10.
Okay. I wasn't even sure if it had OS 10. I guess it's not fine because you had it before me, so
Yeah.
you did funky
That-
things to it.
That's
Right.
the problem.
Darn it.
Really.
Right. So your
Curse you, Trey.
yours
Also, we
and-
won't talk about the dark corners of the internet that Trey might find himself
Right.
into.
Well, yeah, it's a miracle that any of my computers still function. The areas of the internet that I've been playing in my whole life. But so this one, you know, obviously it gets compared to Heartbleed, and it's worse than Heartbleed because Heartbleed it only fell on server administrators to fix. Here it falls on like server admins and
Everybody.
you and me. It's for instance, Bash is probably in your simple.tv. I'm willing to bet. Bash
Okay.
is probably in your
Let me show you how concerned about the simple.tv
Just-
I am.
just throwing out devices.
I'm just
It could be in your Roku.
it's probably
I
the
am
Roku
Surprised.
on Unix based kernel.
Sure. It could,
I mean I know it does.
right. So that doesn't necessarily mean it uses Bash, but it means there's a decent likelihood that it deep in there is probably Bash.
Now, so the insight that Darren Kishen was able to lend to this on Daily Tech News Show this week was that yes, Bash is kind of it's light and easy to use and has kind of been included just because why not on a lot of things over time, but that it's not on a lot of the Internet of Things because you're looking for something that's lower power.
It's even lighter weight than
It's
Bash.
there are things that are even lighter weight than Bash, and so on a lot of this stuff, you actually probably are not running Bash. It's the stuff that's kind of so like the Roku, for example. The Roku and the Simple.tv are 2 good examples.
Yeah.
They are low power, but they're always on. So
Right.
you can afford to have that little bit extra weight of the program and
have that extra
Bash.
have Bash.
Have the significantly larger functionality of Bash.
Right.
So they probably have Bash.
Right. And this is where it gets scarier than Heartbleed because it's not just up the solution to the Bash exploit is not just up to those tech professionals whose job is to make security patches happen. Are everyone's lovely system admins who are overworked and underpaid and always underappreciated. It's not just them who have to fight this war. Now, they're the ones who are fighting the one where it's like 60% of Apache servers, which like up until recently was like our web servers, were vulnerable because Squarespace, as far as I remember, runs Apache.
I believe that's
And
correct.
it's how you have that lovely, WYSIWYG interface is Apache. I mean, it's what Web 2.0 is, right? It's just Apache. And that's like 60% of the internet, but that 60% of the internet is protected by like server admins who pay attention to this stuff. What about everyone's drop cam? Like that's the level of like, and this isn't like, oh, it only attacks specific things. This is just execute commands. That could be anything. Like, turn on and start recording, or blow up. We all know how well America's nuclear infrastructure is maintained. Right? Like,
Hey, no. That's all pre-Bash.
yeah, that's all pre-1989. I just love it's an exploit that's been around literally as long as you've been
Don't remember,
alive.
it all still runs on the really big floppies.
The really big floppies. Which
Well,
I don't
have
need,
Bash on the really big floppies.
I don't even know if you've been alive in a time when those things are standard.
No, I haven't.
I'm not entirely sure I have because
I had a computer that had them. I've seen them. I've used.
No, not the 5 1/4s, the even bigger ones.
Oh yeah, the 7.5. The 7.5.
Yeah, it's 7. I think it's 7 and a something. Because
they're-
5 and a,
The 7 and something.
the last ones that I like, the earliest ones that I really remember is
I
the
remember
5
5
1/4s. Because my Apple IIe, which I didn't have when Apple IIes were current, but my Apple IIe runs on 5 1/4s, and my 386 that we built in the early 90s has 5 1/4. But most of my, and we had some IBM, maybe it was an IBM PC, that ran on 5 1/4s that I remember.
At my preschool graduation, I explained to all of the parents, that was one of those, they had all the kids get up and teach the parents something. I explained to the parents how to properly insert a floppy disk into a computer
Hey,
without
that's
messing it
cool.
up, but I honestly don't remember what size it was.
Well, if it was legitimately floppy and you
It
were
was
alive, it was
legitimately
5
floppy.
1/4. That was 5
It was
1/4.
5 1/4.
I was graduating from pre-K, so that would have been,
89.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's terrifying. The one piece of
90.
advice that I heard on this that was that I took to heart was, if you have a Wi-Fi router that has a guest network and a regular network, what you should do is, for all this Internet of Things stuff, because your Dropcam, maybe you'll get an update for Dropcam like next year for this. Who knows how long it's going to take
Well,
them.
actually, Dropcam.
Dropcam's on
the
top of their
update
stuff.
may be out there for a long time.
Simple.tv.
It's never gonna
Better
happen.
example.
Just forget about it. Go home. It's over. Get a real job.
But so for all these Internet of Things connected devices, your light bulbs that run on Unix, like whatever it is,
God.
that was my favorite example. Really, that there's a light bulb that runs on Unix.
Someone's going to try to give people seizures by hacking their light bulbs.
I want to
Put
hack
it on
a
a
light.
separate Wi-Fi network within your router, and assume that your router is going to get updated.
Oh yeah, mine has been. I
I actually don't know. I need to check the firmware on mine.
had to go in and futz with my internet today. One of the things
That's never something you want to have to do.
Well, we're gonna talk about it on the next show. Okay, so from internet ending bugs to Apple ending bugs, what do you got for us, Sydney?
So there are several things that we have come to expect from any Apple product launch. Vague hints at something that we've been expecting for ages.
You're gonna love it.
Yeah, those little invitations that go out that, yeah, anyway. Apple execs telling us what we want because they know better than we do.
It's actually a giant circle of mansplaining.
And of course, Gates.
Antenna Gate.
Wait, Gates. Because
Mapgate.
that you think Gates, he works for the other company.
It was the dumbest thing.
But
Oh,
yes,
this is
in
the
this
dumbest
case,
thing.
we are talking about those types of gates. So, as Trey mentioned, a couple: Antenna Gate, Map Gate. Excuse me. The cat is destroying things.
Catgate.
Catgate, a very famous one. So take Antenna Gate. If we go back in time to Antenna Gate, the release of the iPhone 4, when
I don't know
all of a
what that
sudden
is.
people's phones were dropping calls and they had poor reception, and Apple's response to this was, "You're holding it wrong."
No, specific. No, it was not Apple's response. It was specifically Steve Jobs' response.
He
And
got
just
on
like-
stage and told everyone, "You're holding it wrong."
He went, "Who holds your phone like this?"
You are all sinners. There is no
And,
hope.
like, I had an
Thank
iPhone
you.
4, and you had to really work. Like, it didn't have great reception, but you had to, like,
Blame
really work.
AT&T.
It was AT&T. It was AT&T's network. You had to really work. You had to, like, squeeze it in just the right place.
AT&T's network went, I don't know what to do.
I have no. That was my first 12-hour Apple line. Anyways, keep going. We had Antenna Gate aside. That was top story of 2011. What else you got?
May I? Thank you. So now with the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, we have another gate, Bendgate, which is just a terrible name. It sounds like Bengay to me, but anyway. So the fuss started early last week when several denizens of Internet land reported that their shiny new phones were coming out of their pockets strangely warped. So then
I
of
always come out
course-
strangely warped.
it's a common
I come out
occurrence.
strange. That's the show title. I come out strangely warped.
So
Oh,
various
gosh.
GIFs and YouTube videos are popping up all over the place, and suddenly BendGate is an epidemic, bending phones everywhere, which was being blamed on Apple's choice to build their phones with aluminum bodies rather than plastic. So those of us who remember AntennaGate were waiting with great anticipation to see how Apple would respond to the latest gate. Perhaps they're going to tell us that people are wearing their pants incorrectly.
Nice!
Skinny jeans, not
Skinny
okay.
jeans are responsible. I would blame leggings somehow if I could, but they don't have pockets, so darn.
That's the problem.
The leggings are safe.
People are tucking them into the waistbands.
But actually, unfortunately for the hype-mongering tech press, the response from Apple was actually pretty reasonable. So they stated that they received only 9 official complaints of bent phones out of the millions of phones that were sold over the last week or so.
Okay, so let's put a stop right here, and let's remember that Apple is a publicly traded company, so they can't exactly lie about things that may influence their stock price. That's like... That's one of those things that being a publicly traded company with is a certain amount of public honesty. So all of the tinfoil hat people, you need to put your hat away to understand that if Apple had in fact lied about that, they would have a much bigger problem than bending phones. They would have the SEC on their butt.
I hate it when the SEC gets on my butt.
It's just rough. And then they also pointed out that their new phones include steel and titanium inserts to reinforce various weak areas. And then, in my opinion, a final nail in the BendGate coffin came down from Consumer Reports, who said, "Okay, guys, let's actually do this scientifically rather than hey, some dude on YouTube said."
Very organized.
So they subjected the iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus, along with several other smartphones, to a compression test. And their findings were that it took 70 pounds of force to cause permanent deformation. Like they'd apply 10 pounds of force, let it go, see what happened, and then 10
So
more.
it's an even, so you're also
basically
getting a repeated
bumping
force.
up by, right, 10, then 20, so on and so forth. So 70 pounds for permanent deformation to the iPhone 6 and 90 pounds of force for the 6 Plus.
By the way, this is an ASTM test for structural members.
Yeah, this is
this is
legit.
This is a legit ASTM test. Like Consumer Reports didn't make this up.
They used science.
I've actually used this machine before.
Yes.
It's the same one they used to test the Plong in the IKEA store. It is actually the same. It is the same machine.
It's the same machine, yeah.
And the same one they used it for the drawers. Anyway, I like the IKEA store.
Science rules.
Keep going.
Thank you. So I think Chris Matizchik over at CNET really sums everything up in the best possible way when he says, in essence then, unless you have metal buttocks or merely an insanely aggressive bent, there's no real reason why any phone you choose should fold under pressure.
Yep.
Don't bend your phones, people. What's wrong with you?
So,
what did we think about BendGate as it was unfolding, and what, to me, the story here is really how the tech press takes things and runs with them and blows them out of
Well,
ridiculous proportion, but
So-
maybe you guys had a different
so
reaction.
then I, as the reasonable member of the tech press, have to, like, in every interaction I've had involving an iPhone this week, explain how no, it hasn't bent yet, you idiot. That is Look,
No. So here's the sad thing, though. This was such a big deal that it covered up the fact that iOS 8.0.1
got
totally
pulled.
broke the ability for phones to work as phones.
yeah, no, it got pulled within 24 hours.
Yeah,
like
like-
Apple had an actual problem this week.
Apple went, oh crap, we screwed that up.
So yeah, Apple, what was it? About a Tuesday, Wednesday?
It was right before this.
Right before BendGate. So, Tuesday, Apple released iOS 8.0.1. And then I never found out. I never downloaded it because then it was gone. And Apple released an apology, and they've subsequently released another patch that
They
came
fixed
out.
it.
Yeah, so that I downloaded yesterday. It works fine. Works great. But this all happened, and all anyone wanted to talk about was, the iPhone should be banned. No, like, yes. I mean, if you want to break something, it will break.
I went to a JV football game at school last Thursday, and no joke, the family sitting in front of me was talking about iPhones. Like, the new phone is so thin that it bends.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
I was having lunch with some colleagues. I put my, oh, you have the iPhone. Does it bend? I was like, well, it will.
Will it bend?
So will yours. Like,
Yeah.
metal phones will eventually bend, actually.
Hey, if you
In
Hey,
some
here's the fun part. Plastic phones will break.
Right. I mean, to a certain extent, it's a feature. It still works as a phone,
Okay, I mean, like, so this will bend, but
but I don't mean like it won't permanently warp. It will either bend and go back, or it will shatter.
so this
Because
is closest to the LG G3
Right,
in
yeah,
construction,
Yeah. 100%.
and which Consumer Reports tested, and the LG G3 withstood 130 pounds of deformation, which is at the same point that the case separated. So it basically just broke.
Right. It just broke. Whereas the iPhone may still be usable. Like, look, it happens.
Well,
like, if
the
it
case
gets
separated at 110 pounds for the iPhone 6 Plus. I'm just
right.
throw one out there,
But
walk
again,
away.
like, you got to really work at it, folks.
Well, yeah, but like that's 90. So this is we're talking 90 pounds of like you're holding the edges solid and you're pressing down with 90 pounds of force in the middle of the phone.
right.
Right. And exactly.
Why?
Well-
Why are you doing that?
So the only
Because the internet
Also-
says the phone will bend.
Also, if you're doing that, you have a really bony butt. I'm just saying.
so
If your butt applies pressure that directly into
yeah. Well, usually, actually, my pockets kind of sit
Eat a sandwich.
flat. No, but it has it's an issue with curvature.
And this wasn't even people talking about sitting on the phone, though. This is people saying, yeah, it was in my front pocket, and when I got it back out again, it was bent.
Were you look, dude? I mean,
Skinny
whatever.
jeans are a crime.
Skinny jeans are a crime, or whatever you saw on acid is very interesting. But are you sure it actually bent? Or did it bend, or did you bend? I know I'm like totally blowing your mind right now, bro. But maybe you're the one who bent. Like,
No, but they like put it down on a flat surface and then it rocked back and forth because clearly the thing that is warped is your phone and not your table.
and then I was like talking to the ghost of Steve Jobs, who appeared to me as an elephant, and he was like,
And he said,
"Dude,
"Your
you need to
pants
take
are
that
too
to the
tight."
Apple Store." Then he dematerialized again. Like, what the hell?
And I took another hit.
I took another hit. Like, what I've been explaining to people is, right now I've got some say. And this is terrible journalism, because if Apple's got 9 cases of 10 million phones sold, minimum, because that
By
was
the way,
their day
that's
one.
the other news.
That was
they
their day
sold-
one number, was 10 million phones
They sold
sold
10
without
million.
the Chinese
That's pretty
market,
fancy.
which is pretty amazing. So of the 10 million phones, 9 confirmed cases. 9.
Of bending.
So you can do math. What percentage of iPhones is that, Jimmy?
Very small.
It's 9 in 10 million.
It is not statistically
Really
significant.
Maths.
You divide by the n and no, not
Nope. Not significant. So I wouldn't worry about it. I would worry more about what went wrong with iOS 0.8.0.1. That's
there's lots of zeros and points. There's a 1 in there somewhere, basically.
right.
remember that joke about how the iPhone's great. It's a multimedia device. You can watch movies on it. You can play music, but you can't use it as a phone. Yeah,
The iPhone
iOS
3G.
8.0.1.
Yeah, but that was never actually about the phone. That was the
about
fact
the
that
network.
AT&T's network for years just was like, maybe now, maybe now. That text
But-
message that you really needed, 3 hours from now, later, eventually.
But just remember that it actually happened. We're not joking when we say it actually happened.
That actually happened. So, speaking of no one understanding the world, the EU.
So yeah, the EU can't make up its mind with Google. So back in February, Google had reported that they had settled with the EU over their accusations of violating antitrust laws. The cornerstone of this issue is that in many countries in Europe, Google controls like 94% of the search market.
Yeah, sure.
This much, just a little bit. So the proposal that they came up with back in February, and we reported on this, was that Google would present 3 rival search results next to their own promoted results, such as their maps and their shopping and whatever.
Right, because the issue isn't actually search; it's the related services.
Yeah, it's that Google is using their search engine because Google's very much known for the
Vertical
sterile,
solutions.
the sterile solution or the sterile environment, but they use the search to link out to their Maps app and their shopping app and their whatever, Google Plus, which nobody uses. Like all of these Google services that exist. So that's what the proposal was about. By serving up next to Google Maps, you would also have Microsoft or Bing Maps and Yahoo Maps or whatever. And the EU seemed pretty good with this. MapQuest.
Yeah, I think that's what Yahoo Maps is.
No, they actually call it Yahoo Maps now.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
The internet has changed.
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating. I think MapQuest still exists. If you go to MapQuest.com.
I'm working on it.
But if you go to Yahoo Maps, I think there's Yahoo Maps.
Okay.
Because branding. So anyways, and that was, all well and good. The EU and Google kind of seemed to have this agreement back mid-February, mind you, that this was going to work. Well, this week, the EU antitrust commissioner Joaquin Almunia changed his mind and said in a speech that the competitors of Google had complained that the competitors' complaints, quote, have given us fresh evidence and solid arguments against several aspects of the latest proposals put forward by Google. End quote. So one of their competitors, Microsoft, claims that even with Google's proposed changes, that people would click on Google specific services 99 times more than a competitor's. Microsoft arrived at these numbers by modifying their Bing search page to match the proposed Google layout, and that's according to a report from the New York Times, showing that people naturally just click in the area where the Google services are, and it has nothing to do with the quality of their services.
That's why they put them there.
That's why Google put them there, because
it out.
Google plays games where they'll move stuff just slightly to see how it affects how often you click. They are always testing just a small, like 5 to 10%, on just like slight changes to the browser to see if they can get more clicks and get more ad revenue. So the EU has 99 problems, but Bing is not one of them.
No, I think Bing is one of them. By the way, MapQuest owned by AOL.
Ah, that's good to know.
Not Yahoo. I was wrong.
So, Sydney, do we think that Google is being attacked unfairly by the EU and their competitors? Or are they truly manipulating the system for their own game? Or both?
I think this is just stupid.
Or does the EU have that problem where they just don't understand how the internet works?
Yeah, I'm going with that one.
Well, what exactly do they think Google's going to do? I mean,
right.
I mean,
like,
I get
here's
that
this restaurant. Why don't you use MapQuest to help you get there?
Like, I often complain about how our own government is governed by people who hate government, and so there's a fundamental contradiction there. But
it's fascinating.
The EU has perhaps gone in a direction that I don't want to be a part of, which is they love government so much they're not even entirely sure why they're governing. I get that, like, Google is an American company and not a European company, but most of the companies that they will end up defending with this law are also American companies, so that's out. Microsoft, mostly. Their only major, or Dogpile, or DuckDuckGo. All three of which are American companies. So, that's out. What are they, like... I get...
They're trying to make it fair, Trey.
Right,
I think Google
fair
is... Like, at the end of the day, I think Google's just going to go, screw it, we'll just pay you.
Yeah, but it was like 300 million euro. It was like the number was outrageous. I mean, they probably won't end up paying it, but paying the full sum. But it's something like 300 million euro.
That number is. Or face charges.
Or face charges.
That's the...
Because, look, the competition is only a click away. There is no law in place that says that people have to use Google.
Right.
And it's not like other competitors don't exist, and it's not even that other competitors aren't any good. Bing's all right. I mean, I use Bing.
I like Bing's home screen.
Because I never use it, but it's integrated into my Windows Phone and into Siri.
In the sense that, if you go to Bing.com.
Sure. I mean, I've been to Bing.com. I never use it.
It's just the way that they present the information. I don't know what the image is right now, but they do
Neuschwanstein.
a giant image and then little factoids that you can click on. They'll take you
it's
to the
kinda fun.
information on that. And then they have the search bar, but the search bar is, so it's usually a dark kind of color and a white search box in the middle.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It's soothing. It's got nice trees, fall foliage.
It's a very, very well thought out like the graphical part of me really appreciates how Bing has approached being different and distinctive from Google, whereas
By the
Google
way,
goes for lots of negative space.
Right. By the way, so a little access this using Chrome. A little bar prompt at the top. Using Chrome, make the switch. Get the faster Internet Explorer. Download now. First of all, it's built into my operating system.
Wait, what?
No joke.
I have to check this out now.
Yeah, go to Bing.com on Chrome.
Wow.
And it says using Chrome, make the switch. Get the faster.
To be fair,
I think we should have them all arrested and make them pay a fine
Google does
for
that
advertising their own
Explorer.
product on their website.
Well, they all do that.
I mean, I feel like
That's
to me
just
this
funny.
is like you went to Burger King and ordered a hamburger, and someone got mad that they're not selling you McDonald's fries to go with it.
It's the other way around. So you went to McDonald's and
which is the
ordered
dominant player in this space.
McDonald's is largest.
Whatever.
Actually, Wendy's is number 2 and Burger King is number 3.
But it doesn't matter. Wendy's is not number 2 in Europe.
Anyways, so you go to McDonald's and you order a French fry, and they say, "Well, do you want a McDonald's French fry, or do you want a Carl's Jr. French fry?" To which the Frenchman says, "I don't know what Carl's Jr. is."
I don't know. It was good enough for Carl Sr. It's good enough for you. Yep. This is the EU. Like,
Find that target women and
what do
post
they
that.
expect? I still don't get what they actually expect Google to do. Yeah, they have 94% market share. Good job. But this is like the browser ballot in Windows over EU's antitrust stuff with Microsoft. That because they bundled Internet Explorer, it created an unfair monopolistic practice, and so you had like a ballot screen come up when you first started up your Windows machine in Europe to select which browser you would use, and that's just, I mean, that kind of is inefficient and ridiculous, and the market took care of it. If Bing was so much better than Google, people would stop using Google. Just like we all stopped using Dogpile and Alta Vista and all of these different technologies because Google worked.
Well, and sometimes it's just like, so I do use Bing sometimes, but that's because it'll be built into a website. It'll
Right.
be, it'll just be whatever is at my fingertips. And I usually use Google because first off, I'm in all the Google services. So like not using
But
Google.
that's what they're on about. I mean, it's that tie-in that they're on about.
Right. Well, but that tie-in is what makes it work for me. And that's one of the things I like about it. And I understand that that's what the EU is railing against. But the other thing is, and this is, I think, going to be part of the problem no matter what. So if Google is asked to track their, success of whatever program they implement, if I'm looking for maps, so if I type maps into Google, so like, let me do a test of this. So if I type maps into Google, it pops up Google Maps, Yahoo Maps, MapQuest, Bing Maps, and then United States Enhanced Weather Satellite Map, which is the one I'm actually going to click on. But it gives me all of the map applications. The one I'm always going to click on is Google Maps because you know what? I'm on Google.
Right.
Always going to click on Google Maps.
Right.
Now, granted, it's serving that up as the first choice, but what? You want me to make it so that it's Bing Maps, then Yahoo Maps, then MapQuest, then Google Maps?
Maybe alphabetical order to keep it fair.
But that's not fair. Then you just name the next mapping product. You name it AAAAA Maps.
No, put an exclamation point at the front because it recognizes special
Yeah, the
characters.
radicals.
before.
Yeah,
Sarcasm.
but I mean that's actually how the stock exchange works. That some company made their like stock symbol like AAAA in order that they would run first. I mean, I'm not even joking.
Oh, yeah.
This happens. The only fair proposal I've heard is there's only one search engine. There's an EU search engine that works as a slot machine as to what search engine your search gets referred to.
And if you don't like the slot machine's search choices, then you can say, actually, no, I want to see the specific results from Google. And
Right.
it'll bring it up.
But the only way to search is within the EU. So then you just use a VPN and you use Google like a normal person. This is, I mean,
But how? I just don't.
this is a non-starter. It's just they'll either pay or the EU may someday figure out what the internet is and stop acting like it and start acting like a functional market economy. So something else that is not yet functional in the market economy is Oculus. So hey, it's another one. Yes, Facebook's VR company and darling of the tech and gaming industry, Oculus VR, announced their latest prototype, Crescent Bay, in the
That's
never-ending
an awesome name.
Yes, but in the never-ending march of prototypes. This one is lighter, more comfortable to wear, has integrated headphones, and allows for 360-degree head tracking that's more precise. You can even now walk around wearing your VR headset, though Oculus still doesn't recommend it. However,
It's tripping.
all of this is supposed to improve your experience of wearing giant things in front of your face. However, this is still not the final version. Yes, this is a prototype that will lead to another developer version, but there's still no timeline for a finalized Oculus that like normal people can go out and buy. So
You can buy
it's a developer kit, but it's not the finished
Developers.
version. So my real question about this never-ending march of prototypes is, yeah, it's interesting that it's better, but do y'all think that Oculus is like doing really great, that they're being super deliberate and making sure they're getting it right and perfecting it and being really open about the process, and that's a good thing? Or are they getting us all excited for nothing, wasting their spotlight, and when the product finally does come out, like the Ouya, it's just going to kind of fizzle and go pfft because they wasted their momentum? Because there's two ways to look at the deliberate pace of this. Either it's a good thing that they're being very precise and taking it slow, or
yeah.
they're being too slow and they're wasting any momentum that they've been building. Thoughts?
What do you think, Sydney?
I think they need to get something out already. I mean, I understand that they're trying to make it good, but at some point you've got to put something in the consumer's hands, and then you can keep developing from there. At this point, it's starting to seem like it's one of those things that they spend so much time perfecting it and developing it, by the time they've got it good, we will have moved on to something else.
Well, but to be fair, I don't think that VR is there yet. Like, from anyone. I don't think anyone is there yet. However, so Oculus, it's all well and good for them to do this deliberate pace.
Then let's just stop
releasing
talking about it.
prototypes.
If they're not gonna, I mean, if it's not gonna be something that anyone can do anything with, why do we have to keep talking about it?
Well, I think that it's almost there. If you look at, for example, the fact that there's going to be an Oculus headset that integrates with the Galaxy Note 4. I
Actually,
think
the Galaxy Note 4 is it's just
It's the
a
screen.
housing.
there's a housing that integrates with the 4 as the screen. So that's interesting. Part of it is I
It's
think
all
that
theoretically interesting, but
people are trying to figure out what consumers are going to want to use it for. I think that that's part of what their issue is right now. And that's one of the things that I think the Note 4 is a play for, to try to see, is this something that people are even going to want? Is this something that people are going to use? Are people going to use the fact that you can use it as an augmented reality thing? Is that, or is this really just you sit at home in your haptic rig with your Oculus and play on the Oasis. I
Well,
mean,
yes,
like,
I mean that is. I mean, they were bought by a social networking company. Like,
but
I've
is
been
that-
over this.
is that all that it's going to be? Like,
I mean,
no,
if you
but
take that
in the
novel
sense that-
seriously, it's a transformation of reality.
in the sense that it's a tethered environment as opposed to a mobile environment.
Why would Earth? Would I want something that big over my face in a mobile environment?
But
Look,
how-
man.
How can they figure any of this out without getting consumers in on it?
Well, I think the risk is,
Well, that's
is what
what
if
the
it comes
developer
if it comes out
prototypes are.
now? It
yes,
it
but
sucks.
we know how people who are within the industry tend to have blinders when it comes to a normal person's usage of technology. So
that's
saying,
helpful.
well, the developers have it is not the same thing as
No.
consumers.
My point is that this comes out and it's awful. They've blown it. That VR only gets one more chance. And I think they're really aware of that. VR existed in the 90s, and it was terrible. Anyone played a Virtual Boy? Was awful. It was the weird Johnny Quest future, and it just didn't work. And so, they don't want to release a product that isn't there. They have to get it right. Maybe they are taking too long to do it, but at this point it can't be due to lack of resources. They have Facebook behind them. But they are fully aware that if they get this wrong and it sucks, they're done. This doesn't get a Gen 2. Right?
Well, the
That's
whole
why they're-
industry is aware of that.
The whole
Because
industry is aware, so they've got
look at
exactly
Google Glass.
one shot at this.
Google Glass has been in developer edition for a year and a half.
Right. And they haven't significantly revved the
They
hardware.
haven't done anything to it.
Right.
They've worked on the app ecosystem, but they're using the app ecosystem to enhance what you do with it, and they're just kind of using it as a test to see what are people going to use this thing for.
I think the other game that Oculus is playing is how long can we wait to the point where there's actually software that is worth having on this. Conference demos are all well and good, but every article I ever read includes this sentence, but it doesn't have its killer app yet. And it doesn't. There's no real reason to get an Oculus. There's no, AAA must-have experience that was designed ground up for the Oculus, because it's a chicken and egg game.
Right. At the same time, there's no incentive for people to develop that if the Oculus isn't available to consumers, because then what's the
that's
point?
true.
You know, how are they making their money? If the Oculus is just going to be floating around in select hands, why would you bother pouring the money it would take to make that app if no one's going to be buying it?
But that's what the developer editions are. So, in kind of a game theory model of this, what Oculus is doing with these repeated developer editions is essentially signaling the developers, saying, hey, this is what this thing is going to be. Hey, this is what this thing's going to be. You need to be developing for it now. You need to be on this train. And we don't have a really good sense, except that, clearly Valve and id are interested.
Well, and the other thing is that you have things like the PlayStation VR. I
Project
also don't
Morpheus.
think that Oculus wants to be the only guy in the game.
No, but they won't be.
I think that everyone is waiting for the first person to strike with their VR and see how the market reacts.
Somebody needs to be that guy and take the first piece of pizza.
I think it's going to be Sony. I really do think it's going to be Sony.
No, because here's the rumors, right? Rumors are either late this year or next year for Oculus. Those are the rumors. Nothing confirmed. Sony. Let's think about how the game industry works for a
that's
second.
good point. Well, I didn't think that it was going to be that soon for Oculus.
Theoretically, next 8 months is kind of what we're hearing for Oculus. Again, nothing confirmed. This is all rumor mill stuff. Sony, you will not see anything until E3. It certainly won't be released until fall. This time next year.
Right, this time next year.
So Oculus has a year to get the jump on Sony. And from what we're hearing, they're going to take that jump. Now, let's see if they do. And let's see if it's any good. Because if it's not any good, you won't see a Project Morpheus. I guarantee.
Yeah. Sony's not going to sink money into it if Oculus jumps out there, the darling of the industry.
And part of the other thing that I think Oculus is waiting on is display technology. What they really want is they want a 4K screen that they can put this close to your face and have it not be too cost prohibitive. Because without that 4K screen, you're going to be able to see. You probably will be able to see the pixels with your eyes that close, and that's part of the issue. And so, gaming hardware is getting to the point where it can push 4K, but not everywhere. And so they're in kind of a waiting game until 4K gets to where it needs to be. And I'm again, this is me thinking it through more than anything else, but I'm willing to bet that that's where this is going. So speaking of going somewhere, it's this week's last call. Maybe. Yes.
Space, a final frontier.
Yes, you're welcome. You all get another space last call story.
Space!
So we have a fourth Mars landing, that is.
May the 4th be with you. What?
May the
You're
4th
talking
be
about
with you.
the fourth host tonight, the cat.
Yes. So, a Mars landing, that is. India actually joins an elite group of the United States, the former USSR, and the European Space Agency of countries or entities that have landed an orbiter on Mars.
Yep.
And they've become the first to accomplish that feat on their first try.
Yep.
Remember
Go
that whole
team.
thing where the U.S., we launched it and we did the calculation in feet and then we just put it in meters and instead of landing it buried. Yeah, that was us.
Darn
We did
that
that.
metric system.
$90 billion. Take a look at Mars.
So the Mars Orbiter mission, or MOM, affectionately,
Awesome.
was completed for $75 million, or
Just like,
fun fact, or less than the production cost of the Hollywood movie Gravity.
so it's more expensive to simulate space than go to space.
Good
So
to know.
that send something to Mars. So what was India's goal with this whole project? Well, the main reason appears to be national pride, and to spark growth in the middle class in India, which is a country of 1.2 billion people that's relatively poor for its size.
So this is Keynesian economics.
Yes.
Okay.
I wonder if a post-industrial country with the world's largest economy can take notes.
Well, depending on how you count it, it's maybe the second largest economy now. Yeah. Well, I mean, we put an SUV on Mars, and we
That's productive.
I mean, what,
That's
the
true,
thing the
we
size
did.
of an SUV. I mean, we have an orbiter that's just now about to land there too.
Yeah, it was sent.
Not
I
that
guess
long ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but you like we
Yeah, no. It should be getting there soon. I
Like-
believe you're correct.
while we are woefully behind in manned space flight, our robot space flight, just like everything else involving robotics, we have spent significantly more money on what our robots can do.
Let's be clear. If the Russians had landed something on Mars, or were planning on launching
shite.
something to Mars, we would have launched something to Mars
Yeah.
that could run over their thing and crush it and
Or
grind
the-
it into the dust.
But ours has machine guns
No,
mounted
instead-
on it.
Our Mars
I
rover,
will not weaponize Mars.
our Mars rover tweeted the Indian Mars craft.
No way.
Yeah, they did. It tweeted, and then it was I don't have the tweets in front of me, but it was something like, "Hey, nice to see you." And the Indian thing's an orbiter, if I remember, and said, "Yeah." And the Indian responded, "Yeah, I'll be around." It was really cute that these two. Obviously, it's the social media teams at the various space agencies, but it also
Sounds like an
has
awesome job.
has a Twitter, and so they were tweeting at each other. So it was like, when it got into orbit, it was like, "Congratulations, nice to see you," and it responded like, "Yeah, I'll be around." So that was kind of cute.
That's true. We did drop an SU. I did actually see that before we
Wow.
launched
Yeah,
it.
it's huge. I don't.
Yeah, I mean-
and we used like reverse thruster. It was like some crazy thing.
We went with the most complicated
like-
solution to the problem.
This is the most.
We said, "Look, man, we messed up last time. If we don't get this one right,
gonna
Congress
get
is going
this
to
one."
cut our funding. We're done."
Make
Well,
it
and
look
then we
good.
had like the really depressing one that was like slowly dying in the cold and just stopped tweeting.
final tweet.
There's a problem
That-
when
that
you have
was
your
the-
spacecraft tweet. I don't remember which
I'm trying to
one.
remember which one that was.
Back
That was
in the Buzz
the.
Out Loud days.
I know. I remember. Cold and dying on Mars.
Yeah. So
Sad,
On
sad
that note-
situation.
on that really positive, I'm probably gonna end on a happy note. but
I feel like that should be the show title.
It's-
Cold and Dying on Mars.
that note, it's time to end. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any feedback for the show, you disagree with Europe, podcast@textlesscall.com.
Or you agree with Europe and
Nope.
disagree,
Disagree
with
with
us.
us.
Nope. Facebook.com/textlesscall,
No.
Pinterest.com/textlesscall,
capitalism
or
only
at
zone.
textlesscall on Twitters. However you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.
We will gladly tell you you're wrong if you agree with Europe.
You You are wrong.
If you disagree with Elliot's commentary on Bash, perhaps.
You're wrong.
He had a lot to say about it.
I mean, not to sound like Dan Riker, but you're wrong. Objectively, you're wrong.
Just don't bring macaroni and cheese into the equation. You're fine.
Children.
I only bring pie into the equation.